Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this Nightmare Before Christmas wirework pendant, and this is what it looks like. So this is the front of it here. Obviously that's Jack Skellington's face, kind of a silhouette of it, and there's a cabochon inside, and then on the back side of it I've made the little hill that's quite significant from the film as well, so unrecognisable. So I just thought have this on the front as kind of be the front of the piece, but then as you wear it, if it flips around, you also have this on the back, nice part of the design, so not just a boring back, but there's something going on there as well. And then a bail. Now I've just added a normal regular chain here to it. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, here I have 2 gauges of regular round wire, and I'm just using a silver coated wire. The first one here is a 0.8mm, and this is the base wire for the whole piece. And then here we have a 0.25mm, and this is going to be the weaving wire throughout. And then finally we're going to need a cabochon as well, and this is just a completely round one, and I'm just using a black one to be that nice background colour. And this specific one measures 3 centimeters in diameter. So let's get all the materials together and let's get started. So then the lengths of wire that we're going to start out with getting ready are 4 lengths of our base wire here, so the 0.8mm of about 40 centimeters each. So each of these is going to kind of create one component of the piece. So then the first thing I did to get started was a bit of sketching. So this is what I have here, the sketches that I made. Also just to refine the idea that I had. So what I did was I just took my cabochon, put it on the paper, drew around it with a pencil just to get the round shape and the size of it. And then I did that a few times, and then kind of said one was going to be the centerpiece. Then I was going to have one here that was going to be the back side. So again I drew the design that I wanted within the circle. And then again the front one there. Again the design that I wanted on that one. It's just kind of to get a better idea, but then also to be able to reference back to these as I'm making them. And what we then need to do is start shaping some of our base wires here, so the different sections. So again I took my cabochon and I also use this to help shape it. I then take one length of my wire here, so the one that I've already cut off, the base wire. And then I want to shape this wire around my cabochon. It's not to use this precise size or anything, because we need to adjust it a bit. It's just easy that way to get this size, close to the size, and also the shape that you want, instead of maybe messing about too much with some pliers and that. So I lay the middle of my wire below my cabochon, and then I just bring the sides around it. And this is basically just to get the circle shape in a nice, quick and easy way. So kind of keep shaping your wire around. And now you'll find that the wire springs open a little bit when you do that, and that's perfectly fine, because what we actually want is for these shapes that we're making to be a little bit larger than the cabochon itself. So not really tight like that, but just have maybe a millimeter or 2 all the way around, so it's a bit larger in size. So that's kind of the basic shape I have in place. And then obviously we have the sketches here as well that we then need to start working with. So I need to decide which one I want to start with. I'm going to get the shape properly in place. Nice round circle shape. So I'm just going to start making this to show you how I do it. So on this one, what I want to do, I want to use this one to also make the bail. And this is kind of how I want the bail to look. So I know this is about the width. So I place my circle here and kind of the midpoint on this side. And then I just take one wire at a time, one side at a time here. Place my plier where I want the bend to be in relation to my little sketch. Keep hold of that. And then I want to bend this wire against my plier and upwards away from the circle. So something a bit like that. That's one side. Then we want to do the other side to get that kind of width of the bail that we want. Put your plier in place and then bend the wire against the pliers, just like that. Again, away from the circle. So that's kind of the basic shape of it. So now it's a bit time to refine it. If it's gone a little bit out of shape, the circle itself, then you can adjust that. And then adjust the angles on this as well. This is kind of the basic of this one. So for now, I'm just going to kind of have this ready, leave this. We want to do another one where the bends on the top here are just closer together. It's the exact same way, just obviously make them closer together. A bit more like you can see here. I've done a little sketch in there on that one. And then after that, we have these two where they're just closer or further apart. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same. Then we need to then go in and start making these designs separately as well. So now I got both these two circles ready here. You can see that's the wider one that I made. And then, like I said, just the exact same thing, just where the bends are closer to each other. We'll have a little bit of a gap between them. And then also, as you're making these different sections, you can keep referring them back to each other as well. Obviously a sketch, but then comparing them to each other to make sure that they're as close in size and shape as possible. Because obviously that's going to have an effect on the final piece. So now we grab the next length of wire here, because I now want to start making the designs like I said. I'm going to start out with this one here, so the little mountain. So again, I grab one, work with that, and then I'm going to start from the midpoint. Then I take some chain nose pliers, put them in the roughly middle of my wire. Then I'm going to just grab one of the lengths and bend that back on itself. So just completely all the way around the pliers. So you get basically a little U shape at the end like that, almost like if you're making a prong. And then we want to squeeze this, because you can see there's kind of quite an open gap there. So I want to squeeze this tighter. So what I like to do is hold my fingers on each side quite up close, and then right at the back of the pliers is where you have the most control. And then start squeezing it tight. Just nice and gently. And it might just flip a little bit, but then you just flip it back. So close that up. And try and make sure we don't really have a gap there between the two lengths of the wire. Just like that. And then make sure you just straighten out the wire if it's kind of got a bit bent while you're working with it. So there we go. That's now going to be basically the very point of the little mountain, or hill rather. So we need to then start making this kind of swirl from that point. So then to start making the swirl here, I grab my wire that I've already bent there, and also the chain nose pliers again. Then I want to put my chain nose pliers right on that end where we bend it. So just like that, grab nicely hold of it, and then we need to start making the swirl. And I kind of do this a bit more in an organic way, you could say. So you kind of want to take one at a time, and then I just grab the bottom one first here, doesn't really matter which one. Then you want to start bringing this around, as you can see, just gradually. So we're kind of creating that swirl. And then tightening up, because obviously the very middle, or very tip rather, of the swirl or the little hill is quite a tight one. So we want to make sure that it gets quite tight. So just do a little at a time, and then I go to the other one, start at that, and now we need to make sure they're a bit off from each other, because we need to kind of have that space in between, or we're then going to be able to weave. So bring that around as well. And then just gradually making kind of a tighter and tighter swirl, making sure you have enough space between the two. They can get in there with your weaving wire. So just take your time here. And then again, with having the sketches, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to go back as I'm making this, refer back to the sketch to make sure that I'm on the right track. So then just bring the sketch back in here. And then the piece that I'm currently doing, then I'm just laying it there in the right direction so the tip starts out the same place as the sketch, and then refer to it and have a look. And I can see I need to make still this swirl that I've started out yet a little bit tighter. So I'm just gonna put my pliers back on, and then just pull at one wire at a time again. So I'm just going to do the inner one first, and then you can do the outer one to kind of line that up after the inner one. Put it back on your sketch. So it looks something a bit like that, and it's definitely much better now because you can see that you have space still. Just need to open it up a little bit. You have the space still in between the wires, but you're getting the effect of the swirl, but also you always need to make sure that you have kind of a gap between the sections of the swirl, so it's going to appear to be one. So you don't want any of the wires to lie right next to each other, obviously right except for the very tip. So then I'm just going to continue here. And it's kind of nicer to maybe have a bit more line on the sketch. Then again, do one wire at a time, just kind of hold it down. And I always kind of start with the inner one. Obviously that makes sense. Bring it around. And by holding the wire a bit further out, you get more of a nice curve in here rather than a full-on bend, because obviously that won't really suit this little hill. Getting an actual bend in the wire. So just get these nice curves. Bring it all the way around, and obviously down here to the bottom to meet up with where the outer frame is going to be. So just getting this little hill in place. That's one, and then I'm going to go to the other one and start pulling this around, both according to the sketch but then also in relation to the other wire that I already pulled into place. And bring it all the way now to the top one where it's going to meet the frame. So something a bit like this. And just bear in mind you've made a sketch, but it doesn't have to be 100% like the sketch. The sketch is more just kind of like a guideline to make sure you're going in the right direction, and also that things are going to still work out and end up looking the way you want them to. So that's pretty much it. So now what we need to do, that we have the little hill in place, we then need to take the lengths of these wire and complete this frame. So make basically the rest of the circle. So then to just finish the frame off here, I'm going to lay it down so I feel it fits nicely with the sketch. Then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers again, and then we need to just do one at a time. I'm going to just grab right on the wire there, right before it bumps into the frame basically. Place your wires, your plier there on the wire, and then grab hold of that. And then what we need to do is bend this against the pliers, and you want to kind of bend it away from the midpoint itself, because this top one you want to bend upwards and the bottom one you want to bend the opposite way. So bend the wire against the pliers there, and just to get a bend in there, and then we're obviously going to go back and readjust it, so don't worry too much about if it's perfect yet. We just need to get the bends in the right place. And then the bottom one here, place your plier, grab hold of that, and then bend that wire against the pliers in the other direction. And make sure you straighten out your wire as you go, because obviously as you're working with it, it will naturally get some bends or misshapen a bit, so you just keep straightening it out. So just like that. This is what it's going to appear like. And then if you want to, you need to, any readjustments, final little positions with the hill, I recommend that you kind of do that now. So there we go. And then now what we need to do is use the tails here to get the rest of the circle, or the rest of the frame. So you just take a bit of time, bring your wire around to get a circle, and then obviously as well as you're doing it, like this, and the other one as well, as you're then doing this, before you kind of finalize it, I would always recommend to still bring back the ones you've already done, keep referring back to them. And this is first of all so we can get the right shape, so it's going to look like a circle, because obviously this is doing it more freehand, but also just to reference and get the right size. So just continue with this. You can always go in with your pliers, sharpen up the corners a bit more if anything moves while you're working with it, and then bring it around. So get your circle and then bring both wires up to the top, And then once you've done the circle and you're happy with the shape and the size compared to the others, then bring the 2 wires upwards, just like we've done with the other ones, but just do it so they lie right next to each other so we don't have a gap. So once you've done that, that's the 3rd little section in place here. So again, just to show you here, and it's the finished little hill. And then as I was making it, I just also referenced back to one of the other ones I already made, just to make sure that they become as similar in size and shape as possible, because they are going to get attached and obviously become one whole piece. So now that I have the 3 little separate sections ready, the last thing we have to prepare is now the face. So again, I'm going to keep referencing back to my sketch here, because even more so now I want this to be kind of as precise as possible compared to the sketch that I did. So I get my length of wire, the last length here, again working from about the middle of the wire, and we're going to start out with making the mouth. So I'm going to just take about the middle of the wire and kind of grab on the wire a little bit apart from each other, and again get a nice curve in there without making a big bend or anything. And I find you get that best by having your kind of grasp on the wire a bit away from each other. You get a bit more of a nice rounded natural curve. Instead, obviously you don't want an obvious bend or anything. So we'll curve in this around the bottom of the mouth. So that's the first shape that we want to get in place. So something like that. Again, even though I want it as precise as possible, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect anyway. So now we need to get the corners of the mouth. So I'm going to lay this on my sketch in the right position. Then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to grab on one side at a time, just a bit before where the corner of the mouth is. Because remember, when you bend the wire back on yourself, it doesn't bend right where your pliers are, it bends just a bit after it, so you need to account for that extra bit of space. I'm going to just then kind of fold this wire completely back on itself against the pliers, all the way like that. And then again we have this little U shape where it's almost like if we're making a prong, just like that. Now the difference is we need to tighten this up, just like we did with the little hill, but we don't want to tighten it up completely because we want to leave space in here to also be able to get weaving wire. So I'm going to start tightening it up in the exact same way as before, but making sure that I don't tighten it fully. So just leave a decent amount of space there, because then when we start weaving, that's going to make a difference in that. And then if it's come a bit out of shape, you can always then reshape it. Like that, it's opened up a little bit, so you just kind of bring it back in to get that nice curve in place. And then you just want to do the same with the other side. So place it back into the right position, grab the wire on the other side with your pliers, and then bend that back on itself over the pliers. Just going to flatten it out there, and again just tighten this up a little bit. Just like I said, not too much, because we want to leave the space for the weaving wire. Otherwise, weaving the whole thing is going to get quite tricky. So like that, reposition it down on your sketch just to make sure you're still on the right track. You need to just bring that back in a little bit again. Something a bit like that. And now what we need to do is shape these tails to be the upper part of the mouth and basically meet in there in the middle. So you just can kind of grab hold. You can also grab hold with your pliers to make sure the bottom part of the mouth that you already shaped doesn't come out of shape, and then start bringing this in towards the middle and basically following the curve of the bottom part of the mouth a bit, but you want obviously a bit of a gap between the 2 wires, because that's going to make so you're able to actually see the mouth, that there is a mouth there. So make a bit of a gap, not too big but not too small. Same thing with the other side. Just keep hold of it and then bring that inwards towards the middle. Something like that. So now we pretty much have the mouth in place. We have the wires meeting there in the middle. You can just have a look at it, make any final readjustments, but then what we need to do is bring these tails of the wires up towards the eyes so we can do them as well. And to do that, again I'm going to place it down to keep referring so I'm kind of heading in the right direction. Place it down in the sketch, and then I want to take my chain nose pliers and kind of just focus on one wire at a time of the tails. Make sure I place them over where the wires are crossing, and I find roughly the midpoint of the mouth here, you could say. So I'm just going to start with the wire that's kind of above the other one. Grab hold of it and keep hold of it, and again just bear in mind that bit that the wire doesn't bend exactly where your pliers are, but just a bit after it. So I'm going to place my pliers roughly there. I'm going to take my wire then and bend it back against my pliers and upwards. So like that, you can see straight upwards from the middle of the mouth there. And then I'm going to take the wire from the other side and do exactly the same thing. Just leave a bit of gap between where your pliers are on the wire and the bend that you just did, so you got space for the bend that you're going to make now and the wire. And then also bend that against the pliers and upwards in the exact same direction, so it goes straight next to the other one. And there we go. And then if you just need to do any readjustments, you can do that. And then also if you want to just tighten up the angle a bit, the way to kind of do that is going from one side of it, squeeze, and then to the other side of it and squeeze. And then the angle becomes a bit more of a sharp angle rather than kind of rounded like it is otherwise. So there we go. Have the wires coming up next to each other, just like that. So that's the mouth, you can see. And we're now getting up to the point here where we need to start the eyes. So then the eyes, obviously you can see they're pretty much the same thing, so I'm just going to show you one of them here, how I did that. Bring it back down. So place the mouth in the right position, because obviously we just need to get the eyes relative to the mouth. And then what I'm going to do again is place my pliers right where, because you kind of see the corner of the eyes are going to be on the inside there, almost right next to each other. Place your plier right below where you need to make the bend. Then I'm going to take that wire, bend it against my pliers pretty far, because we want quite a sharp angle here. You can see it's quite a small angle. I want to sharpen this up a bit. So I'm going to go on each side and have it come down quite far like that at an angle. So that's kind of the inner corner. And then in this case I'm going to be bringing in my 6-step bell making pliers. I'm just using these because I'm going to use that smallest part. You can also use round nose pliers. It's just so I know pretty much what size I'm using for both eyes. I'm going to place these right after the angle and then bring it back up, not all the way around it but just back up, because we need to give that little dip right after the corner. And then keep referring back to the sketch. You can see how much you need to adjust it. So just need to tighten that up a little bit more. So I just roll it a bit inwards, because obviously I don't want that little dip to be too large or anything. And I just want to bring the angle back down a bit. Like that, and then roll it a bit more just to get it completely right. Do have a nice curve there, And then we need to move up and do the kind of the big curve here on the top outside part of the eye. So for that, I'm just kind of going to keep hold of it and then start bringing the tail end back downwards again, making sure it all lies relative to my sketch, and then again bringing from pretty far out and then just kind of pulling it gently downwards, getting a nice curve in there until it reaches pretty much the size and shape following the eye on the sketch. Bring it all the way down a little bit more. And there we go. And now I need to bring it all the way around to the bottom part of the eye. So I just keep holding what I'm doing down against my sketch. It first of all helps to kind of stay in place as I'm working with it, but also obviously makes it so I can use the sketch to reference to the whole time. Like that. And then now this wire is coming up towards the very corner of the eye, the inner corner of the eye. And that's what we want it to do. I've just crossed this over the top of what I'm doing, and then I want this to come all the way, basically crossing over the very corner of the eye, because that also sharpens up the corner. So what I'm actually going to do is then make the other eye but then actually flip it around. So we've basically been working to build the backside, you could say, and then flip it around, and then you can see the corner of the eye is even sharper there. And this is how I'm then going to weave it, but I was just making it from the other direction. You want to make the other eye the exact same way, so build that, and then once you've done that, you'll have both of your tails of your wire coming upwards again next to each other, and that's exactly what we want as well. And then we'll have the face done. So then now that we've finished off the full face here, you can see it fits nicely there. And then what I'm going to do is, obviously it's not relevant yet, but once we go to weave this, right now it's facing the direction that I've been working with it on, so the wire kind of that's lapping over is on the top. So on the bottom here, it's the top part of the mouth that's kind of on the top of the other one, and then the tails are crossing over the top of kind of the inner corners of the eye. So when I start to weave this, I want to make sure I remember that I'm going to flip it around. That's just my personal preference. I think that looks a little bit cleaner that way. So like that. So it just cuts off the eye a bit nicer. So that's how I'm going to have that ready now. And then now, having made these, have all the base components ready. So I did the first one here that I'm going to use to make the bail with as well. And then I have the little hill. And then for the face, we obviously have the face itself, but then I made the other circle with the narrower angles up there. That's going to then be capturing the face. So we have all this ready now, so all the basic components. So now what we need to start doing is start doing some weaving. So the first piece that I'm going to start weaving is this frame, that circle that we made with the wide gap. So if I just show you the sketches again. We have this one now with the wide gap that's going to be the bail, and then we have the one with the hill, and obviously the face where we have the circle with the small gap around the face. So it's the one with the wide gap that's going to be the bail, and that's this one, just to get the kind of the bail weaving out of the way. And then to weave, I have a length of my 0.25mm wire, and this I'm using off the reel, so I'm not cutting a length off. It's just because we have an open gap here that we can weave with, so we don't have to worry about going in between spaces, so we have to cut it off. Just because it's hard to know exactly how long a length we're going to need. So I'm going to take my length of 0.25mm wire here, the weaving wire, then obviously my piece, the frame that I've already done, and then I want to attach this weaving wire first of all, starting towards one end of it, and I'm just leaving a short tail to be able to hold on to. And then I'm putting it behind, and then first I want to wrap this around one side, around the tail here pretty much, and just down between, just twice to get it started. Now what I'm going to do to fill in the bail is basically use the figure of 8 weave. So that means I'm going down between the two wires. We're going to use these two to wrap around, coming down between them, and going from there I'm going to then cross straight over to the other side. So go behind the one on the other side. Now right at the beginning is kind of the trickiest part, because obviously everything is still loose. And also I just want to mention, make sure that the tails are nice and straight here and coming out a bit at an angle. so you get a bit of graduation outward. But then first step is just to get the sizing right. So put it behind, and then I like to just put my finger behind it and keep hold of it while wrapping it around the wire on that side, just gently. And coming down in between again. Before I then continue and get too far, I'm just going to bring in my sketch again. This is just a reference back to make sure that I'm keeping the proper gap on it. Because what can tend to happen quite easily is when you're weaving, and if it's not fastened yet, the wires, the base wires, will start to naturally pull towards each other, and you want to try and avoid that. So if they have pulled a little bit towards each other, just open up the other side again. Just get the wires untangled, and then put it behind again where it's going to be placed, and wrap it around. Push it all the way down and check it once more. So just to make sure, double check that it's going to end up being the right size. So something like that. You can also check against one of the others that you made to make sure the circle is going to stay the right size. So there we go. I think that's pretty good sizing. So now I just want to continue weaving. You still want to just pay attention, especially here at the beginning, because it's still a bit loose because we haven't wrapped very much yet. But then bring around the same base wire again. So we're basically wrapping around each base wire twice before we then cross over to the other side and come down in between. Make sure everything is still aligned correctly, and whenever you feel the need to, you can keep checking back to the other ones or the sketch. Come back to the other way below the opposite base wire and then wrap around that, come down in between the two, and continuously push your wraps together. And also another way of avoiding the wires, base wires pulling together too much, is by making sure you got kind of a bit of a loose hand here. You always want a nice and neat weave, but if you pull too hard, that's what's going to make the base wires come together more likely. Around again for the second time. That's down in between the two base wires, and then cross over to the other side by going underneath the other base wire. And then just continue. So you want to keep doing this, filling in the bail like this, building it upwards. Then what I'm going to do is have a bit of a graduated bail, like I said. I'm going to keep weaving this until I reach the point that I want to be kind of the top of my bail on my final piece, which will be halfway of the weaving we have to do. That's going to also be the widest point. I'm then going to graduate inwards again. So when you get about halfway, so the point is going to be the top part of the final bail, you want to then start graduating inwards. But I'm going to get to that point and then show you how I do that. So now that I then kept weaving here until I reached that midpoint or the top of the bail, once we shape it and put it back on itself and actually make it into the bail, then this is where I'm just going to change the base wise a little bit. So what I'm going to do is grab my chain nose pliers, make sure that what you've weaved so far is pushed all the way down and everything is sitting right, and then I'm going to do one at a time. So take one base wire there and then bend it inwards a little bit, just a little bit like that, so you get an angle there on the sides and the wires are now crossing back in towards each other. And just get it into position, and it's just to graduate inwards again. So we kind of, the midpoint is going to be the widest point, which is going to be the top of the bail. So just make sure that it's sitting right and it seems to be still quite symmetrical. Then what you can do is, to make it easy to weave, is just the ends here, just gently shape them outward again so you have this open gap to weave with. We now want to then just continue to weave the other half, so just about the same length as we've already done on the other side of those bends. The difference is now the base wires are kind of graduating inwards, so instead of outwards, that's the easy part, but when they graduate inwards towards each other, it gets a little bit trickier to weave. So the way that I like to do it is, I'm coming down in between, I'm going to cross over to the other side, and then as I'm crossing over, I hold the wraps that I just did on this current side down with my finger, and then bring my wire over while pushing down the wraps on that side. Use kind of my fingers at the back of the piece to hold everything in place, and then wrap around there, pushing it down while I'm wrapping, and still pushing down on the first side where you're coming from, and wrap it around again. And pressing your wraps nice and close together. And then, coming from that opposite side, I'm going to now press that down while, just gently obviously holding it down, while we're moving over to the other side. Underneath that, press the wraps on that side down with the wire, hold it with your finger behind it, and then wrap around while pushing your wraps down so it becomes nice and neat. The reason for this is because your weaving wire, when you're wrapping around an area like this where the base wires are graduating towards each other, the weaving wire is going to want to slip upwards here because it's a narrower point. That's just the nature of it. So just to try and make sure that that doesn't happen, this is how I prefer to do it. Wrapping over to the other side. Making sure you're keeping all your wraps nice and tight to avoid the weaving wire here sliding upwards like that. As you can see there, avoiding that. So just keep going like that, about the double length of the first half there, and then that'll be the bale woven. So now that I weave the full length of the bale here, then obviously we have that midpoint, and then we have the two sides, so the front and the back, once we shape it. Then we're done with this piece for now, so I'm going to put this aside, and I'm then going to bring out the one with the little hill on it. And what we want to start doing is actually weaving the hill itself. So to weave the hill, we obviously need a length of a 0.25mm wire again. So this one I've cut off, and it's about 2.5 meters. Now that's quite a long length to work with, but I prefer to try and do it all in one go. But if you're not too comfortable with this, you can also work with shorter lengths and then just add in wire if that feels better. And then what we need to do is start right in the middle, because again, like I said before, it's always best, ideal if you can, to weave from the narrow point going towards the wider point, and that's what it's going to be, starting from the middle and then working our way outward. So I'm going to put one tail, the end there, behind this, leave a bit of a tail to be able to hold on to it, behind my piece, and then we need to start weaving here. So first of all, we obviously just need to attach it. So I'm going to come up in the very middle of the piece and pull all the way through. So we first of all need to grab hold of one of the lengths of base wire here. Obviously it's all the same length, but to attach the weaving wire to it. So it's up in the very middle, like that. And then I'm going to go back to the end again. And obviously just take your time here because it's a long length of weaving wire that we're working with. And then I'm going to come down in between, basically in the middle of where the swirl is, coming up in the very middle, and then I'm going to go around one base wire, so come down on the other side of that. And this is just the first step, like I said, to attach it. Make sure when you're weaving as well you avoid kinks. So if you see a little loop like I just kind of had there forming, make sure you catch it before it actually forms and you pull it through, because that can damage your wire, and especially using this much finer wire, it can end up maybe snapping it or weakening it. So we want to try and catch any possible kinks before they happen. So I'm now coming behind, so I'm going to then come up through the middle again, the same place that we started out, because I want to at least attach this weaving wire. We're going around the same base wire twice at least. Pull this all the way through, avoid your kink, and then pull it up, and then we have to come down in the same place that we came down before. So get to the end and just kind of, so all we're doing right now is wrapping around one base wire basically. And then what I'm going to do is get into the exact same weave as I did on the veil itself, which is the figure of 8 weave. So pulling this through, and then after just wrapping around that one base wire these 2 times, we're going to get straight into the weave then, so the figure of 8. Again, avoid all the kinks here. The fiddliest part of this is the very center part, because we're working in quite a tight space, and right now I'm going to the end every time to get my weaving wire through. But when we get a little bit further on, you can also start using this open space and the open space within the shape as well. That is going to make it much easier. But now that I wrapped around those 2 times, get my tail here, hold on to that, we need to then go over to the other side. So what I'm going to do is part of what I said, the open space. What makes it easier is when you have an open space, you can push your weaving wire through like this. So instead of going all the way to the end, where you're also more likely to get kinks, just kind of do a gentle push and curve in it. Push it up through, and then gently pull the whole length through. And obviously do it carefully still, because you can get kinks, but you're far less likely to. So come up through there. And now because it's a small space we have to go back down through, I'm going to have to go back to the end of it. So get it and then go down, which is kind of that spiral bit, because that's what we want to cover, you could say, or fill in with the weave. Pull it all the way through. Pull it tight. And then right at the beginning here, you just want to make sure to push these couple of weaves as far in towards the middle as they'll go, just so we don't have too much of an open gap anywhere. Again, push your wire up through, pull it all the way through. You can see that bit does go a lot quicker, rather than having to go to the end, which I'm going to have to do now again because it's a small space. And down through the same place. And then pull all the way through. So now we basically started off the weave here. You can see the exact same figure of 8 weave. And then all you want to do is continue. But what I will mention as well is you might have to adjust it a bit, because you can see one wire is further out than the other one. So in a way they're a bit off from each other. They also end in different places, but that we can kind of figure out later on when we get further up here. So here, the outer wire, you could say, the one that I've just wrapped around now, you want to maybe wrap around 3 times instead of 2 on the inner one, because if you just look at like the inner 2 ones as a circle, the outer one would have a larger circumference than the inner one. So you need to kind of make up for that by wrapping an extra time or so. So do that for a little bit, wrap around 3 times on the outer one, 2 times on the inner one, get around to further over here, and then obviously we need to wrap all the way down, but then you might have to readjust how many times you wrap where, but that's always something you can judge as you go. Now I've then gotten around a bit further here. As you can see, it's not right at the tip. I'm moving my way up towards a bit more of an open space, and already now it's starting to get easier to weave. So you can see I'm using the open space inside the shape to, like I said before, just push it through, which makes it easier and quicker and also less likely for the kinks. Come around, and then now instead of having to go to the end for the inside bit as well, I can use this open space, which is open all the way out there, so all I can do is slot my wire through just like that. Now for the very inside, I'm still going to use the very end of the wire to go through, just because it's still a bit of a tight space. So come through again on the inside there, pull the wire all the way through, to weave around on the other side here, but then the 2 wraps, because this is the inside wire I'm wrapping around now, those 2 wraps I can again just slot in basically into the hill itself. And that makes it much easier and quicker once you get to that point where you can start doing that. So you just want to keep doing this, like I said, and there's no 100% specific way saying how many times you have to wrap. Like I said, I'm wrapping currently 2 around the inside and 3 around the outside. You might have to readjust that along the way, where you might have to go up to 4 if you feel like the outside one is kind of getting lost behind, not really keeping up with the other one, or you can maybe sometimes take it down. So just judge that as you go. Again, just do the other wrap there, and then cross over to the other side by just going up through the shape. So keep working your way down towards the back end of the little hill, remembering down here when you adjust for the size, depending how many wraps you do, just remember that one of the wires, you could say this is the outside one, it ends before the other one, so you have to make sure you adjust for that so you end up having even amounts left weaving this last bit as well, so you don't run out of base wire on one, but you still have some left to weave on the other. So just bear that in mind. So keep weaving this all the way until you fill in the whole hill completely. So then now that we have these two pieces ready here for the back, so the little hill and then the frame for the hill and obviously the bail, then we need to attach these two together. And the way that I'm going to do that is by putting them together, and obviously make sure that they still fit in size. So when you lay them together like that, the shape and the size fit nicely when you overlay them. So what I'm going to do is, we have the wire still attached that we made the hill with, the weaving wire. I'm going to use that to then attach all the way around. So I'm just going to show you how I do it and the weave that I use. You kind of have to just hold it together to begin with, and then once you've done a couple of wraps it does get much easier. Then what I'm going to do is do just 1 or 2 wraps here by this wire by itself, just to kind of get started. Just another one. And then to incorporate the other one, to begin with, it can be a bit fiddly. You don't have to worry too much about it lying perfectly in the right place just yet, because you can kind of spin it around once you've done a few wraps. Then I'm going to lay them next to each other here, or on top of each other, and then take the weaving wire across both of them and then back through the frame. So just like that. So just like wrapping around the one, we're just wrapping around both of them now. And that's how to connect them, and then come around again. And what you want to make sure to do as well is just mention, I don't want to make this weave too tight, so you want to try and make sure you're not doing it so tight that these two wires, the base wires, are going to lay so close that there's not really a gap, because the weave that we're going to do is going to leave little gaps between the base wires to be able to use them later to connect more pieces. So we want to try and make sure we don't make this too tight. So have a bit of a loose hand, obviously still try and make it nice and neat. So that's around that twice now, both wires. Just try and keep hold of it here. And then I need to come down between the two wires. So just as if we were doing this weave on 2 straight lengths of wire. They just happen to be obviously in these circle shapes, but it's the same principles. Come through there. And then wrap around that single one, the bottom one here, which is the one with the hill. Again on its own. Just keep coming in between them and do that twice as well. So just like that. Again, making sure we're not pulling too tight. And then I'm going to go back around both of them to again have the next connection point, you could say. And gently one more time to do that twice. And then we've done that twice, and we need to go around kind of the bottom one, the one with the hill, on its own again, also twice. And I'm just going to keep going like this really. Just need to separate them. Come through. And you keep doing this all the way around. Building your way here. All the way till you get up to the bail. And then, obviously, once you made a little bit of a wrap down here, come around. You want to then start making sure that it's sitting correctly. So these two wires are going to end up sitting kind of in the middle of the bail on the other one. It's going to sit here. Once you then reach this point, obviously the bails are in the way, so you're just going to have to weave on the single wire here by itself. Make sure you connect these two. I also forgot to mention this wire that I have here, the weaving wire, was just temporary to help keep the piece together while I was weaving the hill. Just take that off and then weave from one edge of the wire over to the other one, so that kind of connects them back together. The weave by itself until the side of the bail, the other side here, and then finish off your weave, kind of the frame you could say, down to the very top part of the hill. And then that's how you connect these two pieces together. Then you'll have this back piece, you could say, pretty much finished as well. So then before I continue with this one here, I also just want to pretty much finish off the bail. So on the back we have these two legs that are coming from the one with the hill on it, just lying on top of the bail. What I'm going to do with them is just separate them out to the side, And then I actually also want to finish them off. So I'm just going to basically cut them down and then kind of swirl them down with a little swirl there and some pliers, just basically to get rid of them and finish off the wires without having too much of an open end of it. But what you could also do, if you wanted to kind of expand on the design, you could completely push them out to the side, and then once we've then done the bail, because I'm going to fold this back over towards the back here, then you would have these coming out from the middle of the bail, from the inside of the bail, and you could always use these to add some more design to this, whether you want to make something more organic along the edge of it once you've maybe put the two pieces together. That's always an option, but what I'm going to do is keep it a bit more simple and then just get rid of them. So to do that, I'm just going to get my flush cutters here, cut them down just to a short length, and then the other one as well. And then I'm just going to get my round nose pliers here to swirl them downwards. So I'm grabbing onto the end of one of them at a time, and then swirling it kind of away from the middle and then downwards, just all the way. And that's also going to act as a stopper there, so nothing's going to come undone. Same thing with the other side. And these are then going to basically be hidden inside of the bail, because like I said, even if you want to use them for some more decoration on the piece, they're coming from inside the bail here. So just like that. So they're now kind of out of the way, you could say. Just going to get that back in shape. So then what we have to do is actually shape the main bail into place and fasten it as well, so then we can start looking at putting pieces together. So to help make the bail then, we need some kind of mandrel or something else, some pliers, to help shape it in the right size as well. For that I'm just using this crochet hook, and this is just not too big and not too small. So I have a set of crochet hooks. It's really handy having loads of different sizes here, where you can just use this round part specifically to make bails. I use that a lot. But any form of mandrel or barrel that you have will work just fine, obviously depending on what size you want it to be. So I'm then going to take my crochet hook here and then the piece where I need to make the bail. And then, if you remember when we made the weaving, we had kind of this midpoint. We want to place the crochet hook or the mandrel behind it. Make sure that you're going to be bending it towards the back of the piece. So basically towards the one here that has the hill, and also to cover those little ends. So I'm going to put this behind. Make sure all your weave is pushed all the way down so it's nice and tight. And then behind the bail and a little bit below the middle. And I'm then going to start bending this around towards the back until it comes all the way around the back here. You can just turn it around and meets the end of the weave, meets up with the very bottom of the bail. So if you need to adjust anything, make sure that you keep your weave then nice and tight, so keep pushing it up just to make sure you get the sizing right. You just need to tighten it up a bit more. And then just check it, make sure it looks nice. So something like that, and you can see there those two little ends are going to be hidden inside the bail, or like I said, if you want to use them to add more decoration to the piece, just they're going to be coming out from inside the bail there to the sides. So now we're ready to fasten it, because obviously the bail is technically still loose because it's not fastened there at the bottom yet. I'm going to use the weaving wire that we used to make the bail, and then grab the end, and we then need to start on one side here, this is where it's coming from already. We need to attach it to the frame right on the edge. So just bring your wire here, any little gap you can find where you can put it through, so we attach them together. So get it through there and pull it all the way. And this is then the one side. Make sure it's going to be fastened in the right place. Come around again, and then I'm going to come around the bail one more time, or that one wire creating the bail really, and then cross over to the other side, kind of just the same way as we did the weave, so come down through to create that kind of look of the figure of 8 weave, so it blends in nicely. And then I'm going to go around on this side once, just want to anchor it first, and then we also need to just attach it on this side to make it more durable and sturdy. Do the same thing, come through a gap here as well, and pull it all the way through. And like that, and again make sure to go around the leg of the wire there just one more time with the base wire, and that's basically fastened now. So the bail is in place, this back piece is nicely in place. What we then need to do is, I'm not going to get rid of this weaving wire because I'm going to use this to then help attach the two pieces together. You might as well use the wire if you still have a long enough length left. If you don't have a long enough length, you might need to add in new wire. So now the next one I'm going to move on to is the face here. So I want to start weaving this one. So again, get another length of your 0.25mm wire, just about as much as you can really bear to work with. There's not a specific length because with this piece we're going to have to add in a fair few different wires anyway. So maybe about 1 meter to 1.5 meters, or a bit more if you can cope with it. What I'm then going to do is, again, towards one end here, leave a bit of a longer tail, because I just want to start using the tail first of all. It makes it a little bit easier. And then what I'm going to do is attach this down here by the mouth. So I'm just going to come behind and I'm going to go down through the mouth, bring it all the way through there, and then I'm wrapping this weaving wire around the top part of the mouth, and I'm just starting on the left side there. So just attach it, because then what we need to do is do a bit of wrapping around that base wire just as it is by itself before we then get into a situation where we can start making an actual weave. So what we're going to do is continue to wrap, and then in this case what's nice and handy just with this area, you have this open space in the middle of the face. So what I'm going to do is take the long tail, bring it in between the top part there, the two tails at the top, and bring it all the way down, and then it comes out in the middle of the mouth. So that helps that a little bit. And then come around the outside on the left side, so next to the eye, and then wrap that around. So like I said, I'm just going to do a few wraps here. Again, up, through, down, all the way through the face, and then come out to the side of the face next to the eye. And basically what I'm trying to do is make a bit of a wrap along the bottom, the middle part of the upper lip, you could call it, the upper part of the mouth, but not all the way out from the side. So just a little section here where the mouth kind of starts to curve upwards further out into that middle point where the two wires are then going straight upwards. Now I then wrap that little section here. You can see it's only a little bit from the side up to the middle there, so it's not all the way out from the one side because it's starting to curve up. So now I'm in the middle part. What I'm going to do is swap over and do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to go from here and then start wrapping on the other side. So basically also connecting the two sides. I'm just going to come up through the mouth, pull my wire through, and then I'm just going to go straight over to the other side and keep wrapping there. And now I'm just going to hold it up here instead to hold it in place while I just do the first few wraps. Just so the mouth is still going to stay nice and symmetrical and doesn't move too much. And then I'm just going to pick back up here on this side, wrap about the equivalent length on this side as I did on the other side. So not all the way out to the side of the very mouth there, but the equivalent length to the other side. Again, just for the purpose of wrapping that top part of the mouth. the bare wire. So it's going to look cohesive still when we start weaving across it. So just do that equivalent thing on this side, and then I'll show you the next step. So I now then wrapped across both sides there. It's about equivalent. And then what we need to do is start the weaving out. So for now I'm still just leaving the tail on here, just until at least I've done a bit more work. Also something to hold on to. So the last wrap that I did came up through the mouth and then around the outside. That's the direction that I've gone in. Instead of going around again, now to start the weaving, we're going to just turn this a bit. I'm going to hold it this direction, because then what I want to do is start weaving across back to the other side. So we're going to be weaving back and forth from side to side of the mouth basically. And you want to make sure that you're weaving across the top of the wires there in the middle, going from the mouth up to the eyes. So I'm going to go across there, and it's still like we're wrapping 2 wires with the figure of 8 weave like that. It's just kind of each end of the mouth. So that means I'm going across here, and then on the other side I have to come up through the mouth. So again, bit of a small space. I'm just going to grab the very end of the wire. So on the other side, come up through the mouth. Just getting my tail out of the way there. Pull it all the way through, gently again, so we can avoid kinks in that. And if you see one forming, make sure to undo it before it forms completely. So up through the mouth here, making sure to come from behind. And then, I just got caught up here. There we go. And then what we want to do is when we're wrapping this one, we want to make sure that it's coming right after all the wraps that you've already done. So this wrap now is going to lay right after or next to them. And then coming down on the other side here. And then also what I'm going to do, the bottom ones here, this is also something we can just look at after when we've done a few more wraps. I'm kind of going to push the wire going across downwards a little bit, just to cover the top of the mouth a bit more. But we're at this point now, same as the other times, you want to wrap around 2 times per base wire when we're going back and forth. So that just means I'm going to take the end, go up through the mouth again, pull it all the way through, and then again that wrap is going to lie right next to the previous one. So we're just building on the wraps here next to each other, making sure the wraps don't cross over each other, because that can then ruin how it looks a bit. And then now we need to cross back to the original side where we came from. So this means this goes across the top of those wires in the middle that are connecting the mouth and the eyes, and then down here on this side. And now we're just going to be doing the same thing but on the other side. So I get the end of my wire again. Oops. To be able to come to this side and then again come up through the mouth, because that fits with, if we kind of imagine the 2 wires being straight across from each other like it most likely normally most times would be, but in this case we just have the shape that we're weaving instead. Up through there and then around that one again, and then just need to go up through the mouth one more time to make it 2 wraps on this side as well. And avoid your kink. So if you have one forming like this, just make sure to undo it, so push it the opposite way before it forms fully. And pull it tight so we get a nice and neat wrap. So there we go. Make sure your wraps continuously lie nice and close together so it becomes nice and neat. So that's basically how you want to fill in this space here, all the way up to the very corners, you could say, of the mouth. So now I kept weaving here, basically filling that space above the mouth, and I've ended up with my wire out to one of the corners of the mouth there. And then what I'm going to need to do is start also incorporating the eye. So I'm on the right side here, so I'm just going to continue to weave, but now I'm going to start connecting it to kind of a bit the midpoint towards the outside of the eye. So I'm going to come up through the eye itself, bring it all the way through, and then we'll need to just kind of anchor it by the eye. So I'm just going to push it down a little bit because we still have a bit of a gap between the eye and the corner of the mouth. That's obviously what we're filling in with the weaving here. So I'm going to place it where I want it and then wrap it around the eye again to make sure it's obviously connected to the eye. Come up through, because again we're doing it twice around each one at least, and some areas and some places might be more, so 3 and then 2 on the other one, for example. Another one here, and then I'm just going to push it down to the point where I want it to sit on the eye to make sure we don't have too much of a gap in the weaving. That's obviously going to show through with the stone we're going to put behind it. So something a bit like that. And then now this wire is coming out towards the side. So if you have more space on the mouth, you can always do a couple of wraps back and forth between the corner of the mouth and the eye, right where we left it. But if you kind of don't have any more space there, all we're going to do for now is leave this wire where we've left it here, because we're going to continue with that and then attach this face to the outer frame. So we're just going to leave it here, and then what I'm going to do now is start a new wire in a different area to keep building and filling in the face. So I'm then going to grab a new length of my wire here, my weaving wire, and again it's not really a specific length because you might fill in different areas and yours might be slightly different anyway. So maybe 1 meter to about 1.5 meters when you pick out a new wire here and start out with. So where I'm just going to continue from is kind of where it ended up, but I'm going to work across the bottom of the eye and then start going between the eyes here in the middle and work my way up there. So to do that, we need to attach our wire first of all. So I'm can just use the tail for that, and I want to attach it on the base wire. That's the bottom part of the eye. So I'm just going to go through here by just coiling the weaving wire around it. So do this a few times, and then basically what you want to do is go all the way, start from that little wrap you just did on the eye that connected the other wire here. Go from that point across the bottom of the eye to this other side of the same eye that starts the new gap basically that we then need to fill in. So just coil around until you get to that point. So I now got to the other side of the eye there, across the bottom, and then I'm ready to start filling in that middle gap as well. So again, you also have to, along the way, kind of just force your wire to get into the position that you want to sometimes. Because obviously it's not necessarily all straight across that we're weaving here. But you can also adjust some of that afterwards. So what I'm going to do is go from this part of the eye where I've ended, across the middle, again across the top of those 2 wires in the middle, that connects the eye and the mouth, across to the other side, to the other eye. And then I want to connect my weaving wire to that eye, come up through, and then we need to do a wrap over here, but again kind of force the wire to go in the right place. So keep hold of it when you feel like it's sitting in the right place to fill in the gap nicely. Then I'm going to come down through again in the middle on this side to then wrap around twice around that weaving base wire, that's forming this eye. And then to basically connect it and attach it here so we can continue to weave, then start doing back and forth properly. Come up through again. So just like that. So I've now basically wrapped around twice more or less. Just going to make sure that my weaving wire is sitting correctly. Just like that. And obviously make sure that that weaving wire that's wrapping around is in kind of the right position. So now that we have that, so we've connected the 2 eyes, you could say, we need to do a bit of weaving back and forth. You could almost say across the nose there, although it's just the 2 wires in the middle. So instead of going down in the same place, I'm going to skip over those 2 middle wires. So remember to always go over them, because it's the weaving that we do over them that covers them up and makes it more look like the face without those 2 wires in the middle. Go down through the gap on the other side to then go back to the other eye and wrap around there. Avoid a kink here and pull it through. And then again, because right now we're weaving from a wider space to a narrower, So you have to kind of just keep an eye and keep hold of your weaving wire as you go, so it doesn't scoot up too much. But then I'm going to wrap back and forth here a few times, going over those two middle wires until we get to a little point here, because you can see there isn't that much space. So eventually, after a few wraps, those two wires in the middle that you're going over the top of will be in the way of continuously going like that. So I'm going to swap from going from the eyes, the wires in the eyes there, to actually wrapping around those two middle wires. But I'm just going to show you that once I get to it. Now that I've then reached that point where I don't really have any more open space to weave from eye to eye, going over those wires in the middle, what I'm then going to do, like I said, is cross over to actually wrapping around those two wires in the middle. So not the ones behind, but the little bit that's left of the ones in front. And to do that, I'm coming, in my case here, the last one I've done is on the right eye, so I'm going to cross over to the other side. But I'm going to go down, basically, in between those two wires in the middle, and then come over on the other side and come up through the eye, and then pull my wire all the way through. Avoid the kinks there. And then you want to make sure that the weaving wire actually goes down in between those two wires in the middle. So just as you're pulling it tighter, you just might need to maneuver it into place. You can also just gently use some pliers to make sure it gets pushed in between the wires. Just like that. And then pull it tight. So now it's just like wrapping around two wires and weaving there from side to side without really an open gap. And again, I'm going to do two on each side here. So bring it around the same wire. Still just a figure of 8 weave. Bring it all the way around. To then, from this side, when you go back to the other side, again come down between those two middle wires. So you just kind of go across the top of the face and then come up through the eye on the other side. So just like this. And then you just do the same thing. So make sure you get the wire in between the two base wires and then tighten it nicely. And then obviously, again, still make sure that the weave here, your wraps, are as nice and neat as possible. And then just do that right until the very top. You can't do any further, so it's only a very little space. Then when you start moving towards kind of above the eyes, doing one side at a time. So now that I've filled this in right in the middle in between the eyes, then it's time to move a little bit out to the side. So in this case, again, I'm ending on the right and I'm going to go over to the left, but instead of going just those two wires right next to each other, I'm going to go over to kind of the middle of the eye on the opposite side. So again, I'm coming underneath, just still continuing that kind of figure of 8 weave up through the eye. And then here you just want to place the wire in the right position again. So I'm crossing from kind of the midpoint there, going across the top of the one right next to it, and then going to this wire that's going kind of upwards in the middle a little bit. And then what you'll find is once we've attached this wire, you have a little gap underneath this weaving wire, kind of that dipping point there, and then obviously above it. But first I'm going to fill in that little dip. So to do that, all I'm going to do is again, first of all, attach the weaving wire in the position I want it to sit. And remember the direction that you're weaving in. So right now I'm going to attach it here, weaving downwards towards the bottom of that dip. Going through. And then again just round twice here to attach it. So up through the eye again. And then here, because we're now wrapping in this very tiny little space, I'm going to have to go back to the very end of the wire and just get that through that little opening. Just like this. And there we go. You can see there's only a little space. I can maybe go across this once or twice, so it's right next to the inner corner of the eye on the other side of that same eye. Go across just as filling in any other gap. And then once I've filled it in enough, I don't really have any more space. All I'm going to do is with the rest of this wire, just go below the bottom part and just coil around that base wire itself, just like I've done down by the mouth and the bottom part of the other eye there. It's just so there's not bare wire showing. I want to make sure to coil around any bare wire, because that's going to make the whole piece more cohesive and make it all blend in. So do that, and then you want to cut off the rest of the wire. Obviously if you have a decent length left, you can still continue using that, attaching it elsewhere. But then once you've done that, I'm just going to kind of go through explaining the rest here, because it's very similar to each other. It's just filling in this space in the face in the same way, really, the same techniques. So you fill in that side. Then on the other side here we also have that little dip. I'm going to start a new wire from there, then start from the bottom of that dip, do my coils first to attach it, and then work upwards in that dip. And then once both of those dips are filled in, they're equal, we can then go from this point, kind of the midpoint of the eye, and then go across and fill in this space. So this part in between the middle of the eyes, basically up to the top of both eyes. So we're going to fill in this whole space, again just doing the figure of 8 weave. Remember to go above those two base wires in the middle still. And then you have whatever wire you've attached to do that, you'll finish on one of the eyes at the top there, and then you'll have pretty much the main part of the face filled in. We're going to have a little bit left down here to do. Down here again, just like the other side, you want to just start a new wire here, attaching from towards the inside of the eye, coiling around that base wire on the bottom of the eye, like I said, just to make it cohesive, and obviously attaching the wire, go across the bottom. Then when you get to towards more the outside of that eye, then you can just go across here once or twice. And then once you have that, we have some, obviously we're going to have quite a few wires stacking up here coming off the piece, but you want to save them except for the small little tails. You can get rid of them, but the others here we're then going to start using to attach the face to the frame. So once you've filled in the rest of the face, we can start doing that. So now I basically fill in the face as much as I can without attaching it to the frame. So that's what we need to do now. So I've got my little tails here, so just ignore them. I prefer cutting them off when I'm getting closer to the end. And I have 3 lengths of wire now here that we can still work with. So I'm going to be using these to attach to the frame as well. So what we're going to need is obviously the frame itself. We already made that ready. So that's this one here with the narrow gap. And then obviously we need the cabochon as well, because we need to use the cabochon a bit to help shape the piece properly. So I'm going to take the cabochon and then my face. And then first of all, I want to just kind of press my face against the cabochon, just so it shapes around the cabochon a bit better, because obviously the cabochon on the front is kind of quite domed. So I'm just going to gently shape the face a bit here, so it's going to sit a little bit better. So there we go. And then what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to make sure that the face is lying across the top of the middle of the cabochon. And then these 2 tails of my base wire is coming straight out of the top of the face. I'm going to hold on to the face there in the right place, and then make sure they lie next to each other and press them downwards towards kind of the back of the cabochon, so they follow the shape. That's going to help the face itself sit nicely and correctly on the cabochon. And then it could help just adding in the frame here, just so you make sure it's going to sit nicely. So just like that, because the frame is going to sit towards the very edge of the back of the cabochon there. Obviously we're going to then fill in between the rest of the face and that frame to kind of finish off the face in the front of the piece. So what we need to do now is these 2 tails that are just pushed against the cabochon to shape them, we need them to come back out and follow these other 2 in the frame. So I'm going to place my pliers on those 2 together, just squeeze them a bit closer together there so they're tight. So I place some pliers, so when I push my wires against them, they're going to end up laying flat with these other 2 tails on the frame. So I'm keeping hold of that and then pressing them upwards like that. And then when I lay this down, so you can now lay it down on a flat surface, it's going to suit that they lie in the small gap, so within, between those two wires from the frame. It's going to lie just like that. And that's exactly what we want. So now that we have this in place and we're happy with the sizing and the shape of everything, now what we need to do, it's going to bend them a little bit more here, is start connecting the frame and the face together as well. And what I'm going to do first of all is, because we need to do some weaving and they can get a little bit tricky because obviously it's got a lot of open space and it's a bit loose. I'm going to first connect the wires up here at the bail. That helps hold it fast a little bit better as we then can continue working with it. So again, I take a new length of my weaving wire, just a decent length again, about the same as the other times. Or you could also leave this on the reel, but then the whole piece is going to be attached to the reel, so while you then do the rest of the weaving, because I'm just going to briefly attach them together here. So first I just want to kind of hold all these together. Can, like I said, that be a little bit fiddly, and also when we keep weaving, I'm going to put my weaving wire behind all these. You don't have to weave all the way down here, you can hold your wires like this, as long as you make sure the two middle ones coming from the face are the ones lying in the middle and they're all lying flat next to each other. I'm going to take a little tail there and put behind. And then I'm going to do the diagonal wire weave for this. Just split the wires apart just a little bit by putting in some gentle curves at the ends. Makes it a little bit easier to weave. And then to start the weave, I'm going to take the long length here, go around the bottom wire first of all, just once, and then I'm coming out towards the bottom of them. I'm going to go across the top of two, now the two bottom wires, those two here. So go in between the middle of all of them, like that. Then come up between the two that I just wrapped across the top of. Push that down, and then go over the top of the next two. So that's now the two middle ones. There. Up between the two that I just wrapped. Push it down, and then over the top of the top two wires, when I'm holding it like this obviously, kind of towards the side. And then in between the two again that I just wrapped. So constantly stepping upwards here. And then just around that top wire on its own. And then coming down behind all the base wires. Then starting again. So around the bottom one on its own. Then around the two bottom ones over the top here. That means coming down through the middle of them all. Then up between the two I just wrapped. Over the top of the next two, going upwards again, up between them two, and then step up again, then over the top of the next two, and up between the two, so come up and just wrap that top one on its own. And then again down behind all the wires to start again. So I'm just doing this a couple of times, 2, 3 or 4 times, kind of little sections here is enough. This is just to hold it tight a little bit together up here, while we then can continue, go back and to weave around the rest of the face. So that's really the main purpose. I'm going to do this for now, and then once we've done the rest of the face and we've gotten further on, we can go back and sort out the rest of these wires. But for now I'm just going to focus on finishing the face. So now we're in position here where we're ready to start filling in the rest. So between the face and the frame, to obviously finish this half of it off. So to begin with, again this can get quite fiddly, but I'm going to put my cabochon in place really, but I have to hold it with my hands because obviously nothing's fastened yet. It's just to help get the positioning and the gaps correct in place, because otherwise you can end up making something too small or too large, and then if you don't kind of keep referring back to the cabochon and you then want to put it in at the end, you might have made something too big or too small, so it's not going to work. So to help avoid that, like I said, I'm going to try and hold the cabochon in place while keeping the face kind of on top here in the position that I want the final piece to be. So something a bit like this. And then what we need to do is these two weaving wires that are coming from the sides of the face, we're going to use those first of all to attach from here down to the frame. That's going to help also anchor a little bit and give us a perspective of the distance on both sides, because we want to try and keep the face in the middle. So to do that, like I said, I'm keeping the cabochon there, especially right here at the beginning mainly, just to make sure I can try and keep the gaps correct and even on both sides. So all I'm going to do is this piece that I'm weaving with now is coming from the eye, and I'm going to go to the frame and just do this gradually and gently. So I'm not going to do anything too harsh straight away. I'm going to go around the outside frame here, and again, same principle, we're just using the figure of 8 weave to fill in the gap. But obviously, to begin with, we just have to get the spacing correct. That's the main priority right now. So I'm going to gently leave that there. So I'm making my wraps right there, right on the side of the face, right next to the top of the corner of the mouth there. Because then what we need to do when we come back around, push the wraps together, and to just use some pliers, just like that. What we need to then do is come back up and actually reconnect to the mouth again. And this is going to be the bottom part of the mouth, which on the sides is what's laying on top, if you remember when we made the mouth there. So I'm going to go through the mouth, because that's the same as coming from underneath. And then pull it all the way through. So again, same principle, we're just wrapping between 2 wires here, filling in the gap. And now it's just about getting the spacing correct. So this is why this part I kind of try and do quite gently. Bring this all the way up to the corner of the mouth. And then I'm going to try and get this into position. So we don't, because what you want to avoid is you don't want to pull this part too tight, because then that's going to open up on the other side. That's why I'm just going to do this kind of one wrap. And then I'm going to go to the other side and also attach it there before I actually do any full-on weaving yet. It's just because what I can do then is if it becomes a bit uneven while I'm doing that, I can undo it and redo it until I'm happy with it, and then I continue with the weaving to fill in the gap. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. Go down through the frame there, because it's coming from the eye on the other side here, so it's just equivalent to the one I've just done. So like I just showed you, just weave gently here about once or twice, and then compare the 2 sides. And then if you need to undo it to redo it, if it's not quite even, then just do that until you're quite happy with how it sits. And also remember how the cabochon fits inside, because it needs to be able to fit inside there pretty much completely and not kind of have half of it sticking out ideally. So keep working on that until it's in the right position, and then I'm going to show you how I fill in the rest of the space. So now that I've connected both sides here, just gently for now, and I'm still happy with how it sits, so it's still nice and centered. What I'm then going to do is, obviously we need to start weaving the rest like I said. I'm just going to explain how to do it because it's the same principle as the rest. We're just weaving from one wire to another and basically filling in the open space and the gap. So what I'm going to do is first of all weave the bottom down here, because that also helps sturdy up the rest of it more when we move on. So I'm going to use these 2 wires on the side that I just used to attach to weave this bottom part as well. And as you can see, obviously we're going from the bottom of the mouth and then down to the frame there. So we're kind of weaving a bit 3D, you could say, a bit at an angle as well. And it's going to give that nice effect of the face. So all you want to do is still use the figure of 8 weave in between. You're starting from one side, building your way down, but again, because this is a circle that we're then weaving, and the inner circle, which is the bottom part of the mouth, is a shorter circumference if it was a full one than the outer one. What we're going to have to do is just do a couple even ones, so 2 by 2, but then when we get just a little bit down here, a couple of wraps down, I'm going to start doing 2 wraps on the inside, continue with that, but then start doing 3 on the outside for every 2 wrap on the inside, just so you get that increased wrap on the outside to make up for the extra spacing, the extra circumference there is on that. Same thing on the other side. I do this side right until about the midpoint, then I do the other side also right until about the midpoint. You might want to swap a bit from side to side though, so to help sturdy it up, because otherwise you can risk pulling more towards one side. So it might be helpful doing a few wraps here, a little section, going to the other side, doing a little section, and then going back and forth until they meet in the middle, just so to help try and prevent that pulling more towards one side and getting kind of an uneven face there. So that's the bottom part. We're going to weave down to the middle of both of them. Then we obviously need to weave the rest. We have this wire up here on the side or the top of one of the eyes, wherever you've ended up. This one I'm then going to just weave across the top of the eye just coiling it around that top wire, top part of the eye, again just to make it cohesive, until I reach just kind of, you could say, the outer corner on top of the eye. Then I'm going to weave that until the frame. So same principle as the mouth really, all the way down to the top of the mouth. So we fill in this gap on the side there, and we're just using that wire. And then we have the rest of it left. So that's using the wires that's still already attached to the face. So for the rest of it here, like I said, I'm just explaining it really just because it's pretty much just doing the same thing, the same techniques, it's just filling in different spaces of the piece obviously. For the rest of it, I'm going to attach a new wire. So again, take a decent length to work with because there's a bit of a bigger space. I'm going to start attaching it up here by the bail because it just makes it a bit easier, because we're then starting from a smaller point, so a smaller area, and then graduating outwards, because I'm going to weave here, just attach it and then go from side to side, from one side of the bail to the other side, and then gradually working my way outwards like this, remembering to go across the top of the two wires there in the middle, just like we did with the face, to hide them, until we reach the top of this piece here. Obviously we've already done that on the side. That's going to fill in the rest of the top of the face. Make sure we end over here at the top of the eye, because we're going to have bare wire there. Attach it, coil it around the top of the eye, and then you're going to be in the same position as we are with this current one at the edge of the eye, and then we have just this little space left on the side of this left eye, if you're looking at it there, to fill in the exact same way as we did over here. And that's basically how I'm going to fill in the whole face. So I just thought it's easier to explain it here because it's basically the same thing, it's just filling in the different areas. So do that. Obviously be careful that the face still stays in the middle, and then once you've done that, we have this section fully complete. So here's then the final face with all the weaving, you can see, and around the frame. And then what I just want to do as well, I've gotten rid of all the tails as well, by the way. Then up here I have this wire still that I just started out a little bit with these tails, so where I just weaved all four of them together with the diagonal weave. And then what I'm going to do is actually want to start separating the wires a little bit. I'm going to continue some weaving just to again get this ready for when we're going to put them together. So I'm just going to take my long tail here and keep weaving, and I'm going to split them into two pairs now. So I'm going to still use a diagonal wire weave. I'm just going to only do it around two wires here. So go down to the bottom one and then go over the top of the two, and then up between the two that you just went over, and then again the top one on its own. So that's these bottom two ones that I'm just using in the same way as all four. I'm just only using the two base wires instead of four. And then again down to the bottom one, then over both, and then around the top one out of these two. And there we go, and that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to weave this for a bit, and then I'm going to go over to the other two on the other side here, so the left ones, add a new length of wire, just start out the weaving the exact same way that I did originally, and then weave about the equivalent length. It's just a decent length here. We can always add more weave to it when we need to adjust it and put them two together. So weave these two separate kind of pairs of wires, so almost you get two legs here of weaved wire. Now I've then made those two little legs here, and it's just like I said, we can always add more to it. So I just made them about the same length as the bail on the other one here, so the back one. So it's going to be the main bail. So now we pretty much have this ready. You maybe just want to get rid of these little tails from the very beginning of the weaving as well. So now that we've done all the weaving on this piece, so it's ready to move on and we can start connecting things as well. I also just want to mention here, around the edge, when you're weaving the face and filling it in, connecting the face to the frame that we had, it's not bad if you can leave a little bit of space around this edge. By that I just mean try and make sure that you don't make this too tight. So there's a little bit of movement and give in this out here, because that will help when we need to put them together. What I'm then also just going to do is these two legs, I'm just going to kind of get them started just so we have it going, and I'm going to finish it after we've connected them, but it just makes it a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is lift one of them a little bit, and then the other one push that down, and then bring that over towards the side, towards the other one here. Still got my weaving wire on there because we might need to make some more weaving on this, and then bring that over to the opposite side. So we'll kind of make them cross over each other here. And try and keep it nice and even. So like that. And then we want to do it again in the same direction. So it's basically as if we're kind of spinning the two together. And gradually bringing them towards each other again. Then crossing over again. In kind of, you could say, the same directions to make sure they intertwine. It's pretty much what we're doing. And still making sure that your legs here, the weave that you've done with the base wires next to each other, that they stay nice and flat. So you don't want it to kind of start twisting by itself, the individual legs, just so they lay nice and flat here. So we don't want to add too much bulk, more than what we have to. Like that. And then that's just getting it started basically. So we can continue doing this, and that's where we also need to maybe add a bit more weave to the lengths. So now we have both pieces ready. We've got the bail on the other one and the face here. We need to then obviously have them sitting like this with the cabochon in the middle. So what we need to do now is connect the two pieces. So to connect the two pieces here with the cabochon in the middle, to begin with, it's going to be a bit fiddly because same as anything else where it's kind of starting out, it's quite loose still obviously because they're not connected yet, and the cabochon also could easily fall out. But just keep hold of it best you can, try and keep it sitting where you want it to sit. So obviously the face sitting symmetrically, so the top here, the two legs, it's going to sit, so this land right in the middle of the bail. So that's how I want it to sit. So what we need to do now is I'm using the weaving wire from the bail originally that we just used to attach the bail as well on the other side. If you have enough in that, you can just keep using that. So what I'm going to do is bring it over to this side here, so up in through the frame, but then up between the two different pieces here to start weaving together. And all we're going to really do is stitch the two different pieces together gradually all the way around. And this is why when we made the frame with the hill, I said to use this weave, because you then have little gaps where we can get the weaving wire in between, and also why I said to not make it too tight, so we have space for the weaving wire. Otherwise it can be a bit tricky to get through, but you can also use pliers if you need to kind of open up a little bit. So I'm going to take my weaving wire here, and then I'm going to come through somewhere on the face towards the top. Again, this is just kind of judging it as you go. It is all the way around. You don't have to take every little gap in this frame, just a decent amount so it's nice and secure. And again on the face, we're just going to go through the weave, just to kind of find a gap through the weave itself, like that. Pull it all the way through there. Make sure you don't get caught, like that. And then I want to pull this obviously weaving wire down tight. And then this is why I said if you can leave a bit of space around the outside frame of the face, because when we need to then attach these two, we're going through like this. So you have the chance to slot this weaving wire in between the wraps around that outer wire. So you got space for that, because that'll make it blend in nicely. And obviously pull it tight so it's going to still sit nice and straight. You don't want to pull it too far to one side or too far up, so continue to keep an eye on that. So I'm coming up between the two again. So now I'm going to go down through the frame of the back piece, which is going through these little gaps in the weave. So just do one at a time here. Get your weaving wire through. And then I'm just going to grab my chain nose just to grab the wire. The very end of it. Like that. And pull it all the way through. And then because we have that weave that we did on that frame on the back side, that's also going to blend in nicely. If you can make sure that the weaving wire slots into those little open gaps, which is also what we're going through. Just like that. Coming out here, again towards the face now. Find the next space through the weave on the face, and then just come all the way to the back, but that's alright. Just kind of let it come out there, because then we can always bring it back once we pulled it all the way through. Make sure to continuously keep an eye on how it's all sitting together, like that, and then I'm just going to make this little curve and push it through in between the two parts here. And just like you can see, it might slip out if you lose grip. Perfectly fine, just put it back together before you continue. Now it's coming up between again, and we're ready to go through the frame on the back side there. So that's really all you do. You stitch from side to side all the way around. Try and make sure to blend it in as much as you can. But even so, it's going to blend in nicely anyway, because obviously it's all really fine wire. So do this all the way around, all the way back up to the top, and then you have the two pieces and the cabochon in the middle all put together. So I now reached all the way to the other side there, with putting the two pieces together and capturing the cabochon in the middle. You can see this is what it looks like around the edge. And then it's all nice and fastened now, so it's really nice and secure, and the stone is in there safely. So the point we're at now is we have the two wires coming from the bail, and then we have the wires kind of making this little twist at the front, and then also obviously the weaving wires there. And I just got rid of the weaving wire that I used to attach them both together. So all that's left to do is finish these wires off, and then basically the piece will be done. So at the back here, I'm just going to start with the two wires coming from the bail. So what you can do as well, you can do other things than what I'm going to do. I kind of want to, like I said, want to keep it simple. So I just want to try and get rid of them and hide them away. You could also use these wires to add more embellishment. I think it might be kind of nice to add some design, make something organic around the edge of the frame. It would add a bit of interest to it. But obviously that's completely up to you and your choice. What I'm going to do is just get rid of them. So I'm going to just take a pair of pliers, and we have the weaving wire ending down there. That's where we attach the bottom of the bail. And I just want to take one at a time and kind of bend it a little bit inwards like that. Make sure everything else stays in place. And then I want to cut this down. So I have a bit of a length left. Something like that. Then again, grab my chain nose and just kind of take the very end of that wire and bend it inwards a little bit. And then I have a bit of space right between the frame and the stone. So I'm just going to take my pliers and push this into that space to kind of get this end of the wire, first of all, out of the way for how the design looks. But also obviously the actual end of the wire we don't want to have sticking out anywhere, and to be able to catch or scratch on any clothes. You want to make sure to try and avoid that. That's one of them. Obviously do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm just going to grab it, bend it over, and then cut it down to a short length, and then again just bend it inwards. And then just be able to tuck it away. And then push it in there. So that's just the way that I'm going to get rid of them here. So pretty nice and simple. But like I said, you can use them to make more of a feature of the piece as well. And then at the front of the piece here, where you can see we have this twist that we were doing, that's going to end up laying across the top of the bail in the middle there, all the way to the back side. And I can see now, obviously I'm going to have to weave a bit more. So what I'm going to do is just continue weaving here, do a bit more of the twist, so to wrap the wires together, and then I'm going to start just bending this against the bail that's already there. So just following that shape and have it come down to the back side there. So just make the twist and the wraps obviously long enough so it reaches right around down to the end. So now continued the little swirl here, you can see, and I bend it around the bail, so now it's coming down towards the back. And then down here I just continued the weave on both legs a little bit, just to kind of have a nice finish. and I brought them out to the side like that. So one towards one side of the bail and one towards the other one. And what we need to do now is basically just finish this off. So what I'm going to do is just do one here. I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and cut down the lengths, because we don't need all this rest of the length left. So we just have a little bit left of the bare wire. And then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and grab right at the end of the wire and then start bending them inwards towards the bail. I might need to change angle here. And then basically where I want to end up getting these is pretty much just inside the bail to hide them away. Again, like before, you could also use these wires to add more embellishment, to continue something maybe around the edge. That's completely up to you. But like before, I'm just going to finish them off. So tuck them into the bail, get them as nice and tight in there as possible. Something like that. And then we have the weaving wire left still. I just left that on because I'm just going to make a little tiny extra security and take that and go through the bail from the inside. It's literally just to make sure to fasten it so it's not going to be moving around. It shouldn't do anyway, but I just like that little extra security. Just bring it through. Avoid any kinks. And then all I would do is just come around the edge of the bail and try and come through the same place again. So you might just have to fiddle a bit with that. Make sure to bring the wire through. And then basically this is just kind of almost wrapping it around the outside wire on the bail, so we can then actually also just cut off this. So just come through again. Like I said, you might have to just fiddle a little bit as you are going through the inside of the bail. So now I finished off both sides there. You can see tuck them away and it gives a really nice shape as well, a bit of decoration. And then the front looks like this. So you have the face, which in my opinion is kind of the front of it, and then you also have a nice back. So if when you wear it, it flips around in the chain, then you still have something on the back that's obviously related. So that's what it looks like. So obviously it's a bit of work to it. It's kind of a big project. And you obviously just use the bail there with whatever chain you want to use. That's completely up to you. But this is what it looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this beaded organic braided wirework bracelet. And this is what mine looks like here. So this in the middle, the wirework, is actually a braid that we've made. And then you have these organic flourishes throughout that you can make however you want to. So you can really make it very organic looking and really customize it to how you prefer it to look. So this is just the example that I've got here, and then obviously I've added the beads as well, and again you can choose whatever you want to add to it.